Under the shade of the Bodhi tree, the disciples sat in silence, their minds yearning for guidance from the Buddha. The Buddha looked at them with compassion, his voice calm yet resonant as he began his teaching on the nature of ego. Ego binds us like chains, he said, his words cutting through the stillness. It blinds us to truth, breeding suffering. A merchant named Vasu approached the Buddha, his face etched with lines of despair. He had lost all his wealth. I was once rich and respected, Vasu said. Now, I am nothing. Why has life turned against me so cruelly? The Buddha replied softly, Vasu, your suffering stems not from loss but from your identification with wealth and status. The disciples listened attentively, their eyes reflecting curiosity as the Buddha continued to share his wisdom with Vasu. Imagine, the Buddha said, a man walking through a storm who carries a heavy bag. The weight slows him down. Vasu, he continued, the bag is your ego. Let it go, and you will walk through life unburdened and free. The merchant frowned and replied, how do I live without my identity? It has shaped every moment of my existence. The Buddha explained, identity is illusion. Clinging to illusion leads to suffering. Freedom comes from knowing all things are impermanent. Even the wealth you grieve, he added, was never truly yours. It was a passing wave in the ocean of existence. The disciples murmured among themselves, reflecting on the profound truth that all possessions are fleeting and impermanence is universal. Vasu asked, how can I accept this truth? My mind resists it, holding tightly to what I once was. Acceptance, the Buddha answered, comes through mindfulness. Observe your thoughts, and see their transient nature. They are like clouds passing. The disciples nodded, their hearts absorbing the teaching as though it were rain nourishing the drought-stricken soil of understanding. The Buddha turned to Vasu and said, each day, meditate on impermanence. Witness how nothing remains fixed in the flow of life. You are not your wealth nor your loss, he said. You are part of the vast interconnectedness that moves through all things. Vasu replied, but if I am not myself, who am I? This thought unsettles me deeply, shaking my very core. You are not a separate self, the Buddha explained, his voice steady. You are the awareness that observes all things changing. To discover this, he said, sit quietly, close your eyes, and observe your breath. Let the rhythm guide your mind. The disciples listened intently, their silence bearing witness to the transformation unfolding in Vasu's understanding of ego and impermanence. Vasu asked, will this practice make me forget who I am? It feels like losing the foundation of my existence. You do not lose yourself, the Buddha replied. You transcend the narrow self and awaken to the greater reality. The disciples looked at the merchant, his face now softening as the words of the Buddha resonated deeply within his heart. As rivers merge into the ocean, the Buddha said, let your ego dissolve into the vastness of awareness. Free from suffering, the merchant remained silent, his mind wrestling with the profound concepts revealed by the Buddha, each word stirring his soul. You are on the path now. Vasu, the Buddha said gently, walk it with humility, and you will find liberation. The Buddha's teachings lingered in the air, a gentle reminder of the importance of connection. Now, reflect upon your own relationships. May your words guide me through this storm of self. The Buddha smiled, his gaze filled with boundless compassion, as the merchant began his journey toward understanding impermanence and true freedom. With the evening sun casting golden light upon the earth, the disciples sat in quiet reflection, their hearts heavy with gratitude. The Buddha spoke again, ego is the storm, awareness is the shelter. Choose wisely where you seek refuge from life's turbulence. As the sun set, its fading rays reflected the impermanence that the Buddha had so profoundly taught in his simple, yet deep words. The disciples rose, their minds awakened to new understanding. and Vasu left with renewed hope, ready to face the truth of impermanence. The light of dawn began to break. The Buddha walked toward the horizon, his presence illuminating the path ahead. Another day, another gathering beneath the wide branches of the Bodhi tree, where wisdom seemed to flow like a serene river. The Buddha sat calmly, surrounded by disciples, while the air carried the fragrance of jasmine and the hum of distant birds. A man named Amar, known for his arrogance and vast knowledge, approached the Buddha with an air of skepticism and confidence. Amar bowed briefly and said, "Great teacher, I have studied the scriptures and philosophies." The Buddha's voice resonated through the serene grove. Balance is the essence of life and relationships. The disciples watched in silence, their attention captivated by the quiet tension between the scholar and their compassionate teacher. Amar asked, "How can knowledge, the highest pursuit, be a prison? Knowledge elevates the mind and separates man from ignorance." "Indeed, knowledge has value," the Buddha replied. "But when held by the ego, it transforms into arrogance and separates us." The Buddha began to tell a story, his voice gentle but profound, weaving a lesson into the fabric of his words. "In a distant kingdom," he said, "there lived a prince who sought to conquer every field of learning known to man." The disciples leaned closer, their curiosity piqued, as the Buddha continued to share the parable with his characteristic eloquence. "This prince," he said, "believed his intellect made him superior, and he mocked those who were less learned than himself. He felt entitled to Ananda's generosity and took without consideration or gratitude." The disciples exchanged glances, intrigued by the stark contrast in the merchant's approaches to their partnership. Ananda, though noble in intention, began to feel the strain of endless giving. His strength waned, and his spirit grew weary. The Buddha's voice softened, reflecting the compassion he felt for those who struggled to find equilibrium in their lives. Bala, unmindful of the imbalance, continued to demand more, until their partnership faltered. He realized that his knowledge had blinded him to true understanding. Amar listened carefully, his confident posture softening as the meaning of the story began to unfold within his own mind. The Buddha turned to Amar and said, "Like the prince, your knowledge is a mirror that reflects only your own self. Break the mirror," he added, "and see the world as it is, not as your ego shapes it to be." Amar asked, "Great teacher, how can one see without the ego? Is not the self necessary to perceive and understand?" "The self is a lens," the Buddha replied, "but it distorts. Purify the lens, and you will see with clarity." The disciples nodded, recognizing the familiar principle that underpinned the Buddha's teachings and provided guidance. For all aspects of life, to give without restraint depletes the giver, and to take without gratitude corrupts the receiver. Humility opens the door to wisdom and allows us to learn from all beings. Amar reflected on these words, his mind wrestling with the idea that his pride in knowledge had been his greatest obstacle. "You must release the need to be right," the Buddha said. "Embrace the truth that wisdom exists beyond your understanding." The disciples meditated on this teaching, their breaths steady as they absorbed the profound lesson imparted by the enlightened one. Amar asked, "What should I do to shed this pride that binds me? How can I walk the path of humility?" "Begin with silence," the Buddha replied. "In silence, observe your thoughts, and recognize how they cling to the self. In observing them," he said, "you will see that your thoughts are like waves. Let them settle, and clarity will arise." The disciples closed their eyes, their meditation deepening as they sought to embody the stillness described by the Buddha's words. They learned that relationships thrive when giving and receiving are in harmony, like the scales that merchants use to weigh goods. The disciples envisioned the metaphor, the image of balanced scales reinforcing the Buddha's lesson in their minds. The Buddha nodded, his expression gentle as he said, "The path is not easy, but each step brings greater freedom and peace." Amar bowed low, his arrogance beginning to melt away like ice under the warmth of the sun's compassionate rays. The Buddha turned to his disciples and said, "Remember, the greatest enemy lies within. Conquer it, and all else will fall away." The disciples opened their eyes, their hearts swelling with gratitude for the wisdom that illuminated their journey toward enlightenment. Amar left the gathering with a lighter heart, his mind brimming with new questions and a resolve to seek true understanding. Remember, the middle way is not a compromise but a path of wisdom, one that recognizes and honors all perspectives. The disciples bowed in reverence, their hearts filled with gratitude for the teachings that would guide them in their lives. With the day drawing to a close, the Buddha rose and said, "Wisdom is the ocean. Let your pride dissolve into it." He walked toward the horizon, the fading light illuminating his path, a symbol of the wisdom he imparted to all who followed him. His disciples carried his teachings with them, seeds of wisdom that would bloom into harmonious relationships. Another day, another circle formed under the Bodhi tree, where truth gleamed like morning dew upon the leaves of understanding. The Buddha sat serenely, his posture reflecting the tranquility of one who had seen the nature of all existence. In the crowd stood Maya, a woman of great beauty, her appearance adorned with finery that spoke of wealth and pride. Maya stepped forward and said, "Great teacher, I hear you speak of impermanence, but I feel secure in my identity." The Buddha's gaze met hers, and he replied, "Maya, the identity you hold is like a house built on shifting sand." The disciples leaned in closer, intrigued by the dialogue unfolding between the enlightened one and the woman of striking confidence. Maya said, "I am Maya, daughter of a noble family, blessed with beauty and fortune. How can this be impermanent?" The Buddha responded, "Maya, a lotus blooms in the morning sun but withers as evening approaches. Such is the nature of life." The disciples exchanged glances, sensing the depth of the teaching and the subtle challenge presented to Maya's sense of self. The Buddha began a tale, his voice a gentle stream carrying wisdom to the hearts of all who listened. "There was once a king," the Buddha said, "who built a magnificent palace, believing it would stand forever as his legacy." The disciples closed their eyes, picturing the grandeur of the palace and the pride of the king who created it. Over time, the Buddha continued, the palace walls crumbled, and the king wept, clinging to memories of what had been. The king sought solace from a sage, the Buddha said, who told him, "Even mountains erode, yet you weep for a palace." Maya listened intently, her expression shifting as the weight of the story began to press against her convictions. The Buddha turned to her and asked, "Maya, if even the strongest mountains crumble, can beauty or fortune truly endure?" Maya hesitated before replying, "But without identity, who am I? What remains if all that I cherish fades away?" "You are not your beauty, wealth, or name," the Buddha said. "You are the awareness witnessing the flow of all things." The disciples murmured softly, their reflections echoing the profound simplicity of the Buddha's words on identity and impermanence. Maya asked, "How can I see this awareness? It feels like losing myself in a vast emptiness, a frightening void." "Sit with the fear," the Buddha replied. "It is the ego resisting its dissolution, clinging to illusions it created." Through meditation, he added, "You will see that the void is not empty but filled with the interconnectedness of all life." The disciples nodded, their silent agreement affirming their shared journey toward understanding the teachings of the enlightened one. Maya said, "I feel as though I am standing on the edge of a great abyss. How do I proceed?" The Buddha replied, "Step forward with courage. The abyss is not your end but the beginning of awakening to the eternal truth. To live without Ego, he said, is to see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. The disciples sat quietly, their hearts and minds stirring as the Buddha's teaching flowed like a gentle yet powerful river. Maya closed her eyes, her breath steadying as she sought to grasp the wisdom shared by the Buddha with infinite compassion. The Buddha spoke again. Maya, reflect on the river. It takes no shape of its own yet nurtures all life it touches. Be like the river, he continued. Flow freely, unburdened by the banks of ego, and you will find peace. Maya opened her eyes and said, I will try. Great teacher, your words unsettle me, yet they call me to something greater. The Buddha smiled, his gaze a mirror of infinite kindness, as Maya took her first steps toward shedding the illusion of self. The disciples looked at Maya, their faces reflecting a mixture of admiration and understanding for the journey she was beginning. The Buddha turned to the gathering and said, True freedom lies not in clinging but in releasing, not in holding but in letting go. The disciples bowed their heads, their hearts overflowing with gratitude for the teachings that illuminated their path toward liberation. Maya remained seated, her eyes turned toward the horizon, her thoughts unraveling the threads of the identity she once held dear. The Buddha rose gracefully, his movements as fluid as the truths he shared, his presence a beacon for those seeking the path. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light over the earth, the disciples and Maya dispersed, their minds alive with wisdom. The world seemed to breathe with them, every rustling leaf and flowing stream a testament to the impermanence the Buddha had taught. Under the endless sky, the Buddha remained, his form a living reminder of the peace found in letting go of self. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.